fastest teams to practice today. Kyle
Casey Kane, we congratulate him, his third career pole.
It's
here
all
at
three Hendrick Motorsports in the front.
There's a few movers and shakers out there.
Carl Edwards free falling for a couple
to victory lane is Joey Logano.
Get the inside line on who's fast and who's last before setting your NASCAR fantasy race team lineup this weekend. This is the Inside Line on MRN.com, presented by Hercules Tires. Now, here are your fantasy experts, Robbie Mays and Tyler Burnett.
You're in luck. Fantasy leagues are back in NASCAR, and the best part is Rich Colbert's not here. That's why you're lucky. But you do have Robbie Mays, unfortunately.
I wish Rich Colbert was here right now to separate me and you.
Robbie Mays.
We do not agree on anything at this point in the week.
We are heading into the biggest weekend in motorsports with, the Grand Prix and then obviously the Coke 600 and the Indy 500. But the Coke 600 ends a great Memorial Day weekend, and I think it's honestly going to be a good race, especially what we saw from the All-Star race last week.
If you can get over the confusion of the All-Star race and forget all of the weird things that happened, that was an amazing race. That was side-by-side racing all night long. The passes for the lead, passes in the pack, passes in traffic, which is positive to me that cars were actually able to, race with each other a little bit. And then we saw a pass for the lead with 2 laps to go, which is the first time we've seen that in the All-Star race in a really long time. So I'm really happy with what happened in the All-Star race the other night as far as the racing is concerned. Obviously, the format probably could use a few tweaks before 2017. Yeah, good racing last week.
I personally like the elimination-style format we saw in the Showdown. What do you think about a elimination? You run 3 heat races, then a main. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say heat races, but, of course, short segments. You eliminate, and put them all into the main, and then you race for $1 million there.
I think every time the caution flag comes out, the top 5 cars have to pit.
Our producer, Daryl Smith, thinks you should just throw the green flag and then just throw the checkered whenever.
Just throw the checker flag whenever we feel like it, yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I like that idea.
Coming up on the show today, MRN pit reporter Alex Hayden gives us his fantasy expert knowledge ahead of the Coke 600 this weekend. He'll also tell us who his winner is going to be. Plus, we'll hear from defending winner of the Coke 600, Carl Edwards. All that and more as the Inside Line rolls on right here, presented by Hercules Tires.
The Inside Line will return in just a moment.
O'Reilly. Restore lost fuel economy and eliminate rough idle with Lucas Fuel Injector Cleaner. Right now at O'Reilly Auto Parts, buy 2 bottles of Lucas Fuel Injector Cleaner and get 1 free. Clean clogged injectors and increase fuel efficiency with Lucas Fuel Injector Cleaner. Buy 2, get 1 free at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. Limits apply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
For a professional option of moving your trucks and heavy equipment safely, effectively, and on time, you can count on Housby Transport. We serve nationwide and global industry-leading companies through a network of experienced carriers. We provide both drive-away and hauling service, regardless of equipment size. We handle all permitting, making your transport and logistics job that much easier. For more information or to request a quote, contact us today at housby.com.
Hi, I'm Marty Huff. Join me and 10-time NHRA National Event winner Doug Herbert for 1 hour of horsepower Thursdays at noon on the Straight Line. We'll talk to the biggest names in NHRA drag racing and keep you up to date with news from the pits, tracks, and shops across the country. Join us Thursdays at noon for the Straight Line, streaming live on the MRN app, the Motor Racing Network's YouTube channel, and on MRN.com.
Now it's back to Robbie Mays and Tyler Burnett on the Inside Line.
Invite your friends to join the other 1,046 people that beat Robbie every week now playing in our fantasy league.
I want to go back to when we were actually doing this for real before last week's All-Star race thing happened.
What?
I beat you 4 weeks in a row. That's 4.
Okay. Did you beat me at Dover?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, then I need to stop talking.
Yeah.
It's tough. There's no question about it with 1,000 people every week. But Invite your friends and play in the league with us. It's really fun. So let's talk Coke 600. Biggest racing weekend, bar none, for, Indy cars, the F1 cars, and then, of course, the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series and the Coke 600. One thing you have to do, and I was just talking to Robbie before the show started. Well, we were arguing. He has two young guys on his team that were good in the Sprint Showdown.
Spoiler alert.
And good in the All-Star race that I think are going to have a tough time going 600 miles, not because of, the adrenaline, but those teams have to make changes on the fly, and if you do not hit it correctly, you will not win the race. You're going to start when it's hot, when it's, the sun's out, and then you're going to race into the nighttime, and those teams, those crew chiefs have to be ready to go to make changes. So with that being said, your number one seed going into this weekend, Robbie.
I think the number one seed on my team, I think the number one seed on everybody's team needs to be Kyle Busch. He's won the last two races on mile-and-a-half racetracks, Texas and Kansas, and he has a 2.3 average finish on the 4 races on mile-and-a-half racetracks in 2016. If you go back to last fall, he has 7 straight top 5 finishes on mile-and-a-half racetracks. That's going back to Kansas back in the fall. At Charlotte, he's never won here in the Sprint Cup Series, but he has come close
there you go.
So many times. He's got 10 top 5s, 14 top 10s, and 24 starts. He's led 907 laps. His driver rating is second highest at a 106.1, so I like Kyle Busch this weekend. I think he has to be on your team.
I'm not saying Kyle Busch is bad, and you can say Kyle Busch has to be on your team. Well, the next guy I talk about has to be on your team as well. Let's go back to those 2 mile-and-a-half races that Kyle Busch won.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys were not the best that day
no,
on neither track.
But they won the race.
Okay.
That's what's important.
The 78 of Martin Truex Jr. has to be on your team this week, and he is on your team.
He is on my team.
But he led 313 laps in those 2 races combined, where the rest of the field led 288, including Kyle Busch, who I think he only led like 100 laps in those 2 races combined. Martin Truex Jr. will lead a lot of laps, and going into this weekend, there's a great chance he's going to lead a lot of laps. Last year in the Coke 600, he did, until Carl Edwards had fuel strategy and won the race. But Truex and that team, they were head over heels the best car in the Coke 600 last year. And on the last 2 mile-and-a-half racetracks, the 78 has been the best car at the racetrack. This week, there's a good chance they're going to have one of the best cars in the Coke 600, and you need to have the Martin Truex Jr. on your team. Don't you agree with that?
But he had the best car at Texas. He had the best car at Kansas, and bad pit strategy at the end of both of those races.
He's still number 1 in fantasy, leading 300 laps.
He may be still number 1 in fantasy, but if you're looking
this
for
is a
guys,
fantasy show.
Okay, yeah.
Not a winner show.
I'll say this about Martin Truex Jr. Only one driver finished in the top 5 in both races at Charlotte last year, Martin Truex Jr.
Yeah, that's right.
6 drivers finished in the top 10, but Truex was the only one to finish in the top 5.
Now, you say Kyle Busch has to be on your team. Well, I am baffled that you do not have Kevin Harvick on your team. I mean, let me just let you defend yourself first, and then I'll tell you why he has to be on your team. Why is Kevin Harvick not on your team?
I could not afford him.
And you can afford Kyle Busch.
I can afford Kyle Busch.
See, to me, Kevin Harvick is over Kyle Busch right now at Charlotte. And here's why. I know that they're struggling on pit road. There's no question about that. But with how fast they are, it's not going to matter. Harvick has 3 wins at Charlotte, all coming in the last 5 years. And in the last 5 Coke 600s, this is the stat because this is a tough race to do it, he's finished in the top 5 every time. He averages a top 5 finish with 2 wins in the Coke 600. Kevin Harvick is a must start this weekend. He could easily go out there and lead a lot of laps just like Truex, in my opinion.
I'm not saying that he's not a must start this weekend. And
yeah, you did, because you're not starting him.
I may be talking about him later on in this show, maybe in segment 4, before we wrap things up. But for the moment, he is not on my team simply because I don't have enough money for him.
All right, so you got Kyle Busch, Truex. Who's your third?
Chase Elliott. No surprise there. He's $2.25 more now than when I picked him up earlier this year. I can't afford to drop him. I cannot lose a top 10 run every week. And right now, Chase Elliott is a top 10 car. And at $2.25 more, I'm throwing away money by dropping him off my team right now. So I recommend don't drop him anytime soon. A 15.0 average finish on mile-and-a-half racetracks in 2016. And other than the 38th at Las Vegas. He got caught up in a crash late in the going when he was running in the top 10 that day. He's been top 10 in the other 3.5-mile racetracks this year, so I definitely like Chase Elliott. And you talk about strategy at the end of the race. He is a smart crew chief, Alan Gustafson, on top of that pit box. Alan's won a bunch of races over the years by playing the strategy card, so I kind of like that idea, going from the daytime to the nighttime. And it's not like we've never had a first-time winner in the Coca-Cola 600. We've had, since 1994, Jeff Gordon, Bobby Labonte, Matt Kenseth, Casey Mears, and David Rudiman have all gotten their first wins in this race. So it's not, out of the question that a driver could go to Charlotte, a young driver could go to Charlotte and win their first race on Sunday night.
Well, could Kyle Larson win his first one?
Well, I've also got Kyle Larson on my team. I'm happy that you mentioned that. I've seen enough of this guy the last 2 weeks. We talked about it on the show last week. Going forward the rest of the season, I think this team has turned a corner. I think Kyle Larson as a driver has turned a corner. He impressed me at Dover. He impressed me last week in both the Sprint Showdown and the Sprint All-Star Race. And even though we've got different rules this week, I still like Kyle Larson on my team.
Well, when I said Kyle Larson, if he gets into the All-Star race, has a good chance of winning the race, you and Rich just looked at me like this. Well, what was that about? Did you not want me to be right, or what?
I wanted you to be right, but I felt like there were other drivers, specifically at Charlotte, who might have a little bit better chance of winning that race than
like Joey
Kyle
Logano.
Larson.
I don't know if Logano will be that great this week. I mean, they'll be all right.
I thought about putting Logano on my team, and he won the 500-mile race here last fall. But right now, I don't know what it is about that team, Team Penske. They just something's weird about them right now. I don't know what it is.
Defending winner Carl Edwards is on my team. The 78 and the 19 were the two fastest cars at Texas, a similar track to this. They both led all the laps. If this team, except for Kyle Busch when he ended up winning the race, as you mentioned, if this team hits it, they can be outstanding. Carl Edwards could have a chance to lead a lot of laps this weekend as well. I'm putting all my eggs into the top 3 basket this week. There's no question about that. Harvick, Truex, Carl Edwards. I have to have one of those 3 hit it. And that's what's going to happen if I'm going to have a good fantasy week. And I think there's a good chance that it will happen. So that's why I'm telling you before the weekend starts. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and then Michael Annett, that's my top 5. So the 46, the 17, the 19, the 78, and the 4. That's my fantasy team. Round out your team, Robbie.
I'm going to round out my team with Jeffrey Earnhardt at $4.75. I have $0 left over. So my team, again, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, and Jeffrey Earnhardt.
Should be interesting. Your fantasy teams, good luck this week. We'll hear what Alex Hayden thinks after the break here on the Inside Line.
Got a question or opinion about your fantasy lineup? Give us a call at 8444-ASK-MRN, and it may get used on next week's show. The Inside Line will return in a moment.
Whatever you drive, wherever you go, Hercules Tires will get you there, whether you're running on dirt or running a job. Our dependable, high-quality tires are the perfect fit for your needs. For unmatched value, selection, and warranty with industry-leading road hazard protection, there's only one choice: Hercules Tires. To learn more, visit HerculesTire.com or call 800-677-9535. Hercules Tires, right on our strength.
Live sports are the one true reality entertainment, where a single dramatic moment can become timeless. In NASCAR, Motor Racing Network's live broadcasts elevate your senses to the sights, sounds, and struggles taking place on the racetrack.
Danica Patrick to the front of the field at Talladega. They are side by side behind her. Jimmy Johnson.
The power of radio to the imagination of the listener. Tune in to the Motor Racing Network. Visit MRN.com for an affiliate list in your local area.
Motor Racing Network, glad to have you aboard for our coverage of practice, something we will be doing all throughout the year.
They are pretty close in practice.
You said you learned a lot in practice.
We can have a good, clean practice.
How many teams are going to opt out of practice?
Get this practice session underway.
As we close out practice, what are we talking about? Practice? We're talking about practice, man.
We are talking practice. Sprint Cup Series practice on the Motor Racing Network. Join us all season long on MRN.com and the MRN app. Welcome back to the Inside Line. Here are your hosts, Robbie Mays and Tyler Burnett.
So Robbie says you must have Kyle Busch on your team. I say you must have Kevin Harvick on your team. We both agree that the 78 must be on your team this weekend. I do like the Kyle Larson and the Chase Elliott picks. I'm not going to lie about that, but I really need to have 3 A-listers on my team this weekend. I guess Chase is getting close to it.
I feel like Chase is on the border of being an A-list driver right now. The way that team has been performing this year, I think he's close to being an A-list driver.
We're now joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Alex Hayden, pit reporter for the Motor Racing Network. Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. Myth, yeah, that's true. Legend, not hardly.
Let's talk fantasy. Robbie and I argued before the show. We argued in the last segment about Kevin Harvick. I then bring you in during the break, and you say you don't have Kevin Harvick either. Why is that?
No, and it's nothing against Harvick, nothing against Rodney Childers and Cheddar Smith, the car chief, and that entire team. They're a very good race team, and they're very fast and certainly have a good chance of winning. But there's just something about it. There's something missing to me with Kevin Harvick in this race team. And I'll use Dover as the example. They were dominant early on and then just simply got behind and seemed like they were scrambling and could never catch up, and then finally got swept up in the big wreck that most everybody else got swept up in. But they were running like 13th when that happened. So, and based off of what we saw in the All-Star race, because let's face it, everybody says the All-Star race is, or the Showdown for that matter, is a good test session and a good indicator for what they're going to have for the 600. I'm just not a believer in the 4-car this weekend at Charlotte. That doesn't mean they're not going to jump up and run well, but for me, I'm just not a believer.
You know, Alex, you talk about the All-Star race, and we go back to it last week, and you just talked about Kevin Harvick not running as well as they normally do. Team Penske overperformed. They finished 1-2, which is shocking to me since they've kind of struggled so far in 2016. Is there anything that you can take from the All-Star race, a short, segmented race, cool temperatures last Saturday night that can play into the 600 on Sunday night?
Well, yeah, I think so. And what I take out of that is Jimmy Johnson, Mr. Charlotte, for crying out loud. Jimmy had a fast race car. I think Jimmy Johnson and that team are going to be, hands down, one of them that are going to be contending for the win. I really like what the 48 bunch is doing. Their pit stops are good. They're fast. They're clean. And going back to Kevin Harvick, when it comes right down to it, this is the longest race on the schedule. Means you're going to make an awful lot of pit stops, and they were consistently getting beat off pit road in Dover. So there's another reason I'm not a huge believer in Harvick, but I think Jimmy Johnson's going to be strong. I heard you mention Kyle Larson. He's one of them I would definitely put on my fantasy team this weekend. If any indication of what we saw over the last few weeks, Kyle Larson has got confidence, and it's continuing to grow as a race car driver in the Sprint Cup Series. The race team is certainly doing their part of it. I like Kyle Larson a lot. He could be your surprise winner for the Coke 600.
What about Martin Truex Jr.? The past 2 mile-and-a-half racetracks we've been to, they've nearly dominated it, and then, some mistake happens. Do you think the 78 crew can put together 600 miles this weekend?
No, I don't. And you just said it. They've been dominant, and then the phrase "and then something happens." They've got to show me that they can get rid of the bad luck, and they've got to show me that they can close out a race. They got to show me that they can finish. It's great to go out and lead laps. It's great to dominate early on, but they don't hand you the trophy and the big check for leading at lap 27. So until Martin Truex Jr. and that Furniture Row team show me that they're a consistent threat to win the race every week by finishing inside the top 5 every single week, then I might be a more firm believer in that race team. They're good, no question about it, and they have fast race cars, but they have yet to put together a complete race. As good as they've run, this is a team that should have already won twice this year, and even going back to last year, they should have won multiple races last year, but easily this year they should have had at least 2 wins to this point in the season, and they've got nothing to show for it.
Alex, I was surprised last Saturday. We had 2 surprise winners, I would say, in the Sprint Showdown. Trevor Bayne transferred his way in, and then Greg Biffle transferred his way in. Roush Fenway has gotten better this year compared to the last couple of years. Would you consider putting either one of them on your team? I know Tyler has Ricky Stenhouse on his team this week, but would you consider starting a Bayne or a Biffle this weekend at Charlotte?
It wouldn't be a bad start given the cost to put them on a fantasy race team. I think they would give you a solid top 15 finish. Would I jump on board right now and say, yeah, boy, after what we saw in the showdown, you got to put them on? No. And I'll tell you why. My reason for saying no is because while Bain won the first segment, he won it with a huge shove from behind on the final restart, and Biffle drove away with his segment. But when they got into the All-Star race itself, when they were compared against the top 15 drivers, they weren't even a factor. They weren't even remotely close. So that tells me come 600 time, that's about where they're going to be. About 15th to 18th is, in my guesstimation, where they're going to end up. So, no, I'm not necessarily a believer. While I am on board with Roush Fenway certainly turning the corner, they're making some great strides and going in the positive direction. They just aren't getting the top finishes yet. So things are trending in the right way and going in the right direction. But much like Truex, you got to finish. You got to show me something at the checkered flag. Don't show me something at halfway. Show me something at the checkered flag.
So you said you had the 48 and the 42. What are your other three starters on your fantasy team this week?
Well, I love Matt Kenseth at Charlotte. I do.
Okay.
And if there's an A-lister out there that's prime, and how many times have we seen a team with a bit of adversity just come right back and run well? Matt Kenseth and Dollar General have announced that Dollar General's not coming back as the sponsor on that car next year, and they're looking for sponsorship for next year. A bit of adversity there. Matt Kenseth is a great driver. He's a great endurance type of driver, and he has fast race cars. And, oh, by the way, arguably one of the best pit crews on the pit lane with his 20-car team. So Matt Kenseth would be a starter for me. And based off of what I saw in the racing, not just in the showdown, but all the way across the board over the last few weeks, A.J. Allmendinger has been a good race car to look at over the last few races. Not just in what he did in the showdown. No, he didn't transfer to the All-Star race, so I didn't get a chance to see him compared. But the weeks leading up to that, A.J. Allmendinger has been pretty doggone good. I think he's a sleeper in all of this. And there was a driver that ran towards the front of the field that really caught me off guard in the sprint showdown this past Saturday, and he's a cheap buy for an all-star team. I like Landon Castle. When you just look for points and you're looking for solid, no matter what type of fantasy game you got, Landon Castle surprised me. He was running at the top 2, top 3 in the showdown towards the end of that thing. So that was a team that showed me they got better throughout the race, and they had a chance to win. But if you're looking for somebody just to get a couple of dollars and maybe get a top 15, maybe 18th place finish, I like Landon Castle. I really do.
Yeah, it's a solid, well-thought-out team.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Landon Castle, and I've always said if he got in really good equipment that he could perform really well. Alex, it's the point of the week now where we kind of put you on the spot a little bit. Who's going to be in victory lane Sunday night?
I think Jimmy Johnson wins. I do. I think Jimmy Johnson, and I think it comes down to not necessarily a long run, but the way I kind of foresee this race playing out. You'll have your pit stops, and I think you'll have your Gibbs cars get out off the pit lane pretty good, but I think you're going to have a 30 or so lap run to the checkered flag, and the team who's adjusted their car the best for the longer runs is the one that's going to come to the front of the field, and I think that's Jimmy Johnson. As good a success as Kyle Busch and Adam Stevens have had, and Kevin Harvick and Rodney Childers, to me there's still nobody better than Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus when it comes to adjusting the car and getting it handling better throughout a race. We all know with the 600 it starts in the daytime. The track changes drastically from sunlight to nighttime conditions, and that tends to throw teams for a huge loop. And that means the crew chief and driver must be on the same page. They must make the correct adjustments. And to me, that spells Knaus and Johnson.
Just briefly before we head to the break, how about your Indy 500 winner? I know you're from the Midwest.
You know what? I'm going out on a limb. He is not a regular IndyCar Series driver, but Townsend Bell wins the Indy 500 to me.
All right.
He's somebody who's been consistently in the top 10 at the running of the Indy 500s the last 6 years, I like Townsend Bell. I really do. He's in great equipment this year, and how cool would it be to see somebody like that go to victory lane?
Yeah, I'd like to see Hinchtown do it just because it'd be an
Sure.
ESPYs type moment.
Absolutely.
He was nearly gone last year, and then
no doubt.
yeah.
And that's the beauty of the Indianapolis 500 this year. There's so many good race teams. And with the draft and the way the aerodynamics are with those particular cars, anybody can win that thing. It's kind of like a Talladega or a Daytona for NASCAR. As long as you're running in the last couple of laps, I think you got a shot to win that thing.
Yeah, Alex, thanks so much for coming on. We'll talk to you soon. Have fun playing golf this week, all right?
Thanks, boys. Enjoy the Coke 600 weekend and the biggest day in motorsports this weekend.
That's right. Alex Hayden, everyone. Love having him on the show. Great advice for your fantasy team this week. We're going to take a break. We're back with our winners next here on the Inside Line.
Tyler and Robbie will be right back to talk more fantasy racing here on the Inside Line. Join the Motor Racing Network every Tuesday night for NASCAR Live. Get the latest news and exclusive interviews from the biggest names in the sport.
One thing, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't worry about people judging and just...
Hear the thoughts and opinions from NASCAR insiders.
Look at what he's been able to do with the Wood Brothers since they returned to full-time competition this year. Now, obviously...
It's NASCAR Live every Tuesday evening at 7 Eastern on the Motor Racing Network.
Race on over to mrn.creekstonefarms.com now through June 8th and enter our Sizzlin' Steak Sweepstakes, where you can win a gift certificate good for $500 in Creekstone Farms premium Black Angus beef and all-natural Duroc pork. No purchase necessary. Open to legal residents of the 50 United States and District of Columbia who are 21 or older at time of entry. If you want America's best Black Angus beef ribeyes, fillets, all-natural pork tenderloins, baby back ribs, and more, you've got the green light. Go to mrn.creekstonefarms.com and enter today.
O'Reilly. Restore lost fuel economy and eliminate rough idle with Lucas Fuel Injector Cleaner. Right now at O'Reilly Auto Parts, buy 2 bottles of Lucas Fuel Injector Cleaner and get 1 free. Clean clogged injectors and increase fuel efficiency with Lucas Fuel Injector Cleaner. Buy 2, get 1 free at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. Limit supply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Let's talk more fantasy racing on the Inside Line. Here's Robbie and Tyler.
It's wild to be listed as, the defending Coca-Cola 600 champion. I mean, that's such a big deal. And it's like I told Marcus, we won that race, and it took a little while to sink in, how big of a deal that was. And I feel very fortunate to have won it. Last year we won the Coke 600 and the Southern 500, and both of those races, those are just races I watched on TV as a kid. So it's cool to be the winner.
Of course, Carl Edwards makes his name in the biggest races last year, and the Coke 600. The defending winner, of course, it was Fuel Strategy, but that was a big win for him and Darian Grubb last year.
It's one of the 4 crown jewel races in the sport, so it's always a big deal, and he won 2 of them. So
that's right. Jimmy Johnson, again, he's won this race a lot, and Alex mentioned it. That would be a great pick for this week. We kind of overlooked him because we were more focused, the 18, the 78, the 4. My thing is, Jimmy and Chad are just outstanding at Dover, and they really, kind of struggled at Dover. You never know on that last restart where they started up front, but they could have won that race. But, Jimmy Johnson is one that probably will be good this week. I just overlooked him for some reason.
His 10-race average here is a 19.9.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid of that.
Your winner this week, Robbie Mays?
All right. I'm not contradicting myself by saying this. I have to justify that to myself. Kevin Harvick is my winner this weekend. 6 straight top 10s on mile-and-a-half racetracks going back to last year, and 6 straight top 10s at Charlotte as well. So Kevin Harvick is my winner.
I've been saying for about 3-4 weeks now, Martin Truex Jr. wins the Coke 600. That's my pick. I know that he has to make it 600 miles like Alex mentioned, but that's my pick to win. This week, Cole Pern and Martin Truex Jr. get the biggest win of their life this weekend at the Coke 600. I think Hitchtown wins the Indy 500. What do you got?
I like Hinchtown as well.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to see Brian Clausen try to get a chance up there, too.
Yeah,
I know his car's not good enough,
but
I'd like to see that happen.
But anyways, enjoy the biggest weekend in racing. Our friends at PRN have the broadcast of the Coke 600. God bless them, because that's a long race. Yeah. But we'll talk to you next week as we head to Pocono, the Tricky Triangle, on the Inside Line Fantasy Racing Show.
You've been listening to The Inside Line, presented by Hercules Tires. Stream us every Friday on MotorRacingNetwork.com or on the MRN app. The Inside Line is also available on demand at the MRN.com Media Center, or download it through iTunes or Stitcher. The Inside Line is a production of the Motor Racing Network.